leverage storytelling in a way to get alignment, to sell a vision. Because at the end of the day, you can't sell a big vision CX with 50 bullet points or PowerPoint pages, because a list of capabilities is not a story.
Customer experience wisdom, a dash of travel talk. We've been cleared for takeoff.
The best meals are served outside and require a passport.
Hey, welcome aboard CX Passport travelers. Today we get a chance to talk with Neal Berg, a global CX strategist and founder of Evolve Partners. Neal knows customer experience transformation, especially blending this UX design with strategic storytelling to elevate brands. With over 25 years of experience, Neal has led impactful customer experience initiatives for Fortune 100 companies like IBM, AT&T, Honeywell, brands you know, driving major gains in customer loyalty and revenue. At Evolve Partners, Neal now helps clients build customer-centric cultures and develop future-ready business models. His focus on connecting storytelling with CX and UX makes Neal's approach both innovative and results-driven. Notice that word storytelling. It's a key part of who Neal is and how he creates value. I want to learn more about that today. Neal, welcome to CX Passport.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
It's going to be a good chat today. Now, listeners, I apologize for the gravelly voice. Neal knows this. I am in the backside of a head cold, so we're gonna get through this together. If you've ever traveled on a plane when you weren't feeling so good, it's kind of like that, but it doesn't matter. We're still going to have a great conversation today. Just apologies in advance for the voice. Neal, I mentioned those big company names in your experience, Fortune 50 type names. Those can be really hard challenges for any initiative, and especially for customer experience ideas. How do you gain the buy-in for customer experience and specifically a voice of the customer program at a place like those?
Yeah, it is challenging. I mean, particularly the larger the brand, the bigger the complexity and dimensions and dynamics are involved with leadership changing and business conditions. So large brands really do have to navigate, really big, challenges over time. I mean, a good example I was at AT&T, they are really focused on brand marketing. And CX was not as much of a priority. They didn't do as much investment in that area. But the more we showed them, how customer centricity and voice of customer really impacted how they're perceived in the marketplace, it did help them make better decisions around CX. So it is a very intense sort of environment, particularly when you're working with global markets as well, because then you can have brand perception be very different in Asia, that could be very different than North America or Europe too.
Oh yeah. Let's actually, there's two themes in there that I want to actually pull on a little bit. And that is, well, threads, themes. We're just going to pull on anything here today because you've got some good ideas going there. One is you said, tell them how this would affect that brand, the brand perception. And imagine brand perception is one thing, and then tangible business results is another thing. How did you walk them through that? And then I'm going to circle back to that global aspect, but how did you walk them through that if you do this, you're going to get this brand perception, and that is then going to create this business value, this tangible result?
Well, it does take time. And one of the, I guess, key factors is you really have to have conversations across the organization, because different leaders are going to have different objectives, both personally and professionally, and even for their business group. So I think one of the sort of powers of storytelling is you can shift the emphasis to make it relevant to a specific stakeholder or executive. And it really is key that they are sort of bought in and they see their success in the story, as opposed to being a story that's happening apart or isn't relevant to how they perform or need to invest. So I think one of the key aspects of that is really making sure that you're telling a story that eventually will unify, sort of the company perspective, but really making it tangible for a specific business leader.
Okay.
One business leader might be focused more on business KPIs and revenue. Another might be more focused on NPS or customer sentiment. So it really takes a kind of craft at really stakeholdering and being kind of a deep listener to really understand what's driving them, so you can really help, build that into the story.
And what I'm hearing, it's almost a, hey, CX person, do the things that you're telling others to do. And that is, in this case, listen to your customer, know what they want, that being the executive, and adjust your approach, not with deception, but rather with emphasis, and push the information that would be most impactful to what they're seeking. Let's go to that global side of it. When we're talking about brands like that, you're right. It is around the globe, and there are different perceptions, different expectations. How did you navigate those waters in those brands when it comes to, ultimately, it's a business result that's being sought, even if the customer is different in all of these different regions of the world?
Yeah, a great example I had a lot of exposure to that was with Honeywell, where I helped launch a global B2B commerce platform, and I did all of the research and a lot of the UX strategy behind it. And one of the things that was really interesting is they were really starting with North America and Europe, is that Honeywell is fairly well regarded as a brand in most of their products for building automation, is the area that the group that I was in, and it is fairly highly regarded. And they're sort of the Mercedes of some of their types of products that they specialize in. But that's not such the case in Asia. They are much more competitive. There's other brands in those markets that Honeywell is not as highly regarded. And so one of the things that we did when we did research around understanding buyers in the Asian and Chinese market specifically, is that they have very different drivers of what is going to make their make them a good customer, or help them understand how to make it easy to get the products and so forth. And so there was a balancing of really understanding how a large brand can't necessarily be hitting it on all continents, let's say.
Right,
There's
yeah.
there's a lot of factors, and particularly doing business in China is also very challenging too. So
Right.
you have a lot more regulatory, sort of areas that you have to be compliant in and so forth. So it's challenging enough, but then when that shifts by region and by country, the brand perception can take a big hit, because you can't necessarily address all the customer friction points for each of those respective territories or countries. So it is a sort of, and it's something too. The leadership has to decide, okay, where do we want to place our bets?
Yeah.
Where's our biggest revenue drop, sort of markets and so forth.
This is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for listening to CX Passport today. We've now reached our cruising altitude, so I'll turn that seatbelt sign off. While you're getting comfortable, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Love it if you'd tell a friend about CX Passport, leave a review so others can discover the show as well. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode.
I think that's an important point for us to emphasize. And, listeners, viewers, if y'all agree with this, grab this out, share it with somebody you think that needs to hear this point. Timestamp it and let them know. Neal, you're saying something that's almost slightly countercultural to those of us in the CX world, and that is, hey, you know what? You can't do everything. And maybe you aren't going to win the customer in this region. Maybe you aren't going to. And making those choices means that, yeah, you might, maybe not as exaggerated as I'm about to say, but leave some customers behind. Did you find that, even if not specifically at Honeywell or anything like else, sort of philosophically challenging, that, hey, we just can't prioritize this customer base because we need to focus on this customer base?
Yeah, I mean, that does happen, particularly where, I go back to Honeywell again, that they really looked at who their biggest, I guess, revenue sources were. And they really, they made a executive decision to really focus on those top. There's literally like 8 companies was like 80% of the revenue. It was interesting. And so they decided really they would give sort of more of a white glove or a larger account team to those companies, and the longer tail companies would really be relegated to self-service only, or they would, so they made decisions like that. But they tried to, we definitely looked at how best to make even those long tail experiences still easy and seamless.
Yeah, you weren't trying to just piss off customers, right? It wasn't like, how can we anger this other tail? And that's the thing that I think a lot of us that came into the CX world come with kind of that heart, that empathy, that softer side of and that may have been what has damaged the CX brand to some degree in the recent past, is that not focus on business results. This is a great example of, no, honest to God, these are our best customers. This is where the revenue is. We're a for-profit business. This is what we're going after. I love it. I could spend the whole episode talking about this because now you got me all riled up, but I got to switch. I want to talk about something that I mentioned in the intro, but it's something I saw in your bio. You talk about future proofing a business. And I guarantee Kodak and Blockbuster really thought that they were future proof. So how are you actually helping businesses future proof for real?
Yeah, that's been a challenge, I would say, threaded throughout my whole career in doing CX the last 25 years is there is sort of this sense that there's going to be some kind of magic playbook or bullet. And the truth is it's shifting every year. I mean, and now that we have AI in the mix, that's another, sort of variant in the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, but one of the biggest, I guess, kind of factors that I look at is, just embracing agility, sort of so the sense that the organization really has to always keep an open mind and be open to what the data is telling them, and really, and if they're not already customer centric now, they need to be, because we know, from, I mean, I've been preaching this for over 10, 15 years, is that there really are no unique products in the marketplace. It's all created by experience today. And so I think some companies or some visionaries haven't quite got that memo, that maybe they do have a good idea, but there's very few truly commoditized products or services today. It's all about everybody delivering essentially mostly the same thing, but how they deliver it and that sort of engagement level and depth of emotional connection with customers. But I think, as and I've seen CX evolve from helping corporate companies build their first websites in the early aughts to embracing multi-channel, mobile, and now we have chatbots and all sorts. So it just seems the technology keeps evolving and emerging, and so you just have to build a culture, like I said, that's agile enough to really be open to trying these new things and being going kind of with floating with the kind of the waves in the marketplace.
Yeah. And so that agility, what came to mind when you were saying there probably are no new products out there, is the idea of the number of keys on a piano haven't changed. The number of chords that exist in music hasn't changed. And yet there's an incredible, rich source of ever evolving music. And I think of that as sort of in the same vein, that maybe the products are the same, the needs of the customers, they might kind of change, that sort of stuff. And I realize nothing's as binary, as pure as what we're saying. And yet there's so much that you can do to affect the experience around it and create a different song around that product, create a different memory for the customer that makes them want whatever it is you're delivering. Okay. So you talked about that evolution and the like, and there has been that evolution that you're describing. Yet, aside from the agility part of it, because you have to be changing, so much of it has stayed the same. You mentioned a playbook that you wrote with Diane Majors, which longtime listeners know she was episode 10, y'all, on CX Passport. But these core principles, these bedrock, never-changing principles of customer experience you wrote about in that playbook years ago. How are you blending both that legacy CX principles with the new evolutions, the agility to then create the value that businesses need today?
Yep. So, and that was Diane and I go back to working. We met each other at AT&T, and one of the things that we found, I was kind of at this corporate brand design level, and really trying to bring in design and UX as a culture. And we introduced design thinking and journey mapping we actually created a curriculum. And after we kind of trained them in a full day immersion, well, how do you actually, you sometimes when you learn something and you go back to your, regular jobs, like, how do I do?
That was fun. What do I do now?
Bring this up to my boss and actually make this happen. And so we actually kind of created a what to do now kind of, okay, now that you understand what journey mapping and some of these, VOC is, how do you actually engage with your team to actually make it happen? And it really goes back to some of the basics. You need some type of an executive sponsor that says, I see this as a problem, and if you don't have one, it's going to be very difficult to get your to stakeholder and network and get any kind of I guess a ground wave to actually take action. And then you need passionate players that also want to solve this problem. And so we kind of help them through, and then really kind of if you have the data, that can really help drive the story, voice of customer, or even we actually got a number of design sprints. We actually had customers actually in our design thinking workshops. So, as we're doing empathy mapping, we could say, hey, let's ask the customer. They're standing right here. So we try to introduce ways for them to make it a much more dynamic way to work. And it's funny, I never forget, there's a number of people that after they kind of learned, some of these techniques and approaches, and they were just worried, are we going to be allowed to do this?
Oh, how fun.
Almost like they had to go, wow, is this something that our leaders want us to do? They weren't sure about that.
Well, especially when you say a phrase like, talk to your customer, they're right there. Like to us, it's like, well, duh. And then when this is first coming out, it's sort of well, are we allowed to? Yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And there's some, as every company, account managers get real possessive of, no, you can't talk to my customer. So you have to sometimes break those barriers down. There's a lot of, they're worried that the customer might say something that, is not, flattering to their service quality or something. But that's how you have to, I think if you can build that customer centricity culture where it's okay to have small failures so you can overcome them. I think there's still this culture of like, I have to do everything perfect, everything right. But things are changing. That's an impossible task today with, so many different emerging technologies and trends happening. So I think building that sort of safety zone, that it's okay to rethink what's happening and listen to your customer and, maybe make different choices, based on what you're hearing. So.
You are a big storyteller. That's something that you have said, or at least, it's a part of your brand. This is, I think, the impact of storytelling. What is it about storytelling that draws your focus now?
So I think storytelling is such a powerful sort of tool because it really, let's at the end of the day, we would talk about, sort of ancient sort of truths. We humans are adapted, that we've evolved through storytelling through thousands of years. So it's almost like it is so in our DNA. So kind of using that as a basis to really tell, technology and emerging customer stories is a natural thing because people already want to hear a story. So in a way you don't have to force someone. A story is already something, as you grow up as a child, you're used to storytelling. So I think when you can sort of leverage storytelling in a way to get alignment, to sell a vision, because at the end of the day, you can't sell a big vision CX with a bunch like 50 bullet points or PowerPoint templates or pages where you're outlining all these capabilities, because a list of capabilities is not a story. And really, if you can tie a story, can really tie it back to the emotion, which is to me the heartbeat of any CX strategy. Is if it's not grounded in understanding how you're connecting emotionally, then there's really no basis for how you're going to improve or move the I guess success forward. So business success relies on customer experience, and that the sort of the DNA of customer experience is emotion. So everybody can align to when they hear a customer's not happy, there's a pain point that can be resolved. That is something I think everybody has a natural tendency to want to solve for.
Neal, I want to, let's do a little storytelling here. It's a little fact finding, a little storytelling as well, but I want to ask you to join me here in the First Class Lounge. We'll move quickly here and have a little bit of fun. What is a dream travel location from your past?
So a dream travel location I went to when I was turned nearly 40 was Egypt. That was
Oh,
something I had dreamed of in grade school, and all my book reports and
yeah.
all the things that you do as you're going up and building models and so forth. And I had always dreamed of going to Egypt, and so finally, in my I had never been across to Europe until I went. I was actually in my late 30s, 39, 40, and I started with Egypt, and it was
Wow.
beyond my wildest dreams. I spent 2 weeks there. I was on a tour
Yeah.
that was really specialized, but it was one of the most amazing travel sort of
Yeah.
dreams come true trips I'd ever done.
Well, a spectacular destination in and of itself, as you said. Yet it's very rare that I hear that that's the first trip for a Western Hemisphere person like you and me to cross the pond and go to Egypt. There's so many more, air quote here for those that aren't listening or just listening, accessible countries. What a great place to start. It sounds like you've got that sense of adventure in you. What is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
I mean, I've been to almost every continent with the exception of Africa and South America.
Okay.
But South America would be one. There's probably multiple countries in South America I'd love to go to: Argentina,
Yeah.
Peru. So that's a whole continent that someday I hope to get to. There's
Yeah.
probably many trips that would be really interesting down there.
Yeah, it is. It is nice to think of the continents and checking them off the list. I've got two that I still have yet to hit, and I definitely will, God willing, do before I leave this mortal coil. What is a favorite thing of yours to eat?
Pretty much grilled anything. I love grilling, but seafood particularly. I love grilled seafood, salmon, fish, things like
Yeah.
that. So it's always the I do most of the cooking in my house, so I'm the designated cook for
Nice.
my family. So grilling is always relatively easy, and always everybody loves it. So
And not only is it tasty, it's usually easier than you think it is.
yeah,
And the cleanup is awesome. So
right,
that's one of the
exactly.
best part about grilling, right? All right, let's go the other direction. What is something that you were forced to eat growing up, but you hated as a kid?
Well, I had an interesting childhood. I was in a military family,
Okay.
and we lived in Taiwan when I was like in
Nice.
early grade school. And there were times that we'd be out, we'd have to go out to dinner or go to some function, and I had no idea what the food was. We'd be at a table of food, and I remember, I guess there was lots of things that I just, things like tofu, which wasn't even introduced to America back in that
Right.
time, or uses of eggplant and so forth. So I had a lot of food challenges when I was in Egypt, but my father insisted that you have to take one bite, and if you don't like it, then that's it. But he always said you need to at least try one bite, and then he was right. Sometimes it'd be like, wow, that actually tastes good.
Yeah.
Don't just judge it by its visual appeal.
Boy, and especially when you're in a country and a culture that is not kind of what you're most accustomed to. Yeah, some of those things look real odd, but if you're willing to go ahead and take that first bite, yeah, you find something there. But I could, as a Western kid, I imagine that the Asian foods could be somewhat challenging. I can see that. We're going to have to exit the lounge here, Neal. What is one travel item, not including your phone, not including your passport, that you will not leave home without?
Eye blinders. I found those when I go on a plane, or if I need to
Yeah.
get sleep in a place where there's a lot of light. That helps me. That's one thing I always keep close to my sort of personal items.
Neal, so I mentioned you have started this new consulting company, which is exciting in and of itself. You also told me that you're doing this in tandem with your spouse. And I, too, am actually newly working on a business with my wife. It's been valuable and entertaining and challenging at times. How has this experience of working with your spouse been for you?
Yeah, it's been a real fun exploration. I have to be honest; it was a little tense at first because we've been working together on and off probably on some projects, for many
Yeah.
years. But more recently, it's been really actually working quite well. She has a deep expertise in growth strategy,
Mm.
and her specialty is professional service firms. So she's actually an expert, sort of recognized in that industry, particularly in accounting and
Uh-huh.
in the financial services area. And she's amazing in front of her clients. And so in a way, I'm able to not necessarily have to be the industry expert and really bring in CX strategy and a lot of the tools for helping evolve those companies. And it's really starting to gel really nicely. So we're really starting to build our sort of chemistry in a new way beyond our marriage and having raised up 2 kids.
Yeah, that's you mentioned that kind of evolving and figuring it out. My wife are doing something similar there, and there was a phrase I heard. I was listening to an old episode of Smartless today, and Jason Bateman was describing creative negotiation. And I thought, yes, that is not negotiating creatively, but rather when you're dealing with something, a creative, a concept, a strategy, a tactic, how do you negotiate that with the spouse? And you find creative ways to handle that are different than just the traditional relationship conflicts that exist because you're talking about business together. You have been focusing on a very particular area, or mentioned one to me in the context of voice of the customer. And it's service providers. And we don't think of this often, but it's out there. Law firms, medical practices, HVAC, plumbing, others in that space providing services. What's unique about those areas that are drawing your focus there? How does storytelling take place in those arenas?
Well, this is an area in the business that they're still operating kind of on the way they've always done business for 40, 50 years. And with the changes in market, they have not had as much impact to how they do their work and how they build relationships. But now with new technologies, even training how they recruit new employees, a lot of the younger people, practitioners want to actually embrace these new tools. And a lot of the older sort of partners in these firms are like, well, hey, we didn't need that in my day, so why do we need it now? But they're realizing they're missing out on a lot of talent. And so, and in addition, they're also missing out on growing their practices because there are other firms that are embracing change and building that experience at a much more emotional level with their customers that they have now. They've come to realize that not all of them, but some of them are starting to realize that they need to, leverage some of these tools. It's not like they can't just live in a vacuum because they know that their customers are Amazon customers or name another brand that's using technology. They are encountering those same type of experiences, and if they're not embracing, they're going to look out of step. And so that's really kind of a new frontier that we've been kind of looking at, how helping not only understand the difference between a service engagement versus a experience engagement, and really determining one is just transactional, whereas the other is actually building a emotional connection with a customer or a client in this case. So in the service industry, they call them clients, not customers.
Right.
But by doing this, we're actually also training people within these companies to really elevate their understanding of what client experience is, how to activate it. And so in a lot of cases, they're not really building CX departments per se, but they're really leveraging, bringing CX into their organization and just needing guidance on how to do it as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point in the sense that this does, like you said, doesn't require a CX department. I think there are both large companies and also, in this case, smaller companies that would look at that and go, well, I can't do that. I don't want to create this formal overhead, this formal structure, as opposed to, no, these are principles. These aren't organizational bodies. They can be. They don't have to be organizational entities. It is principles around understanding the customer, acting on it, and then getting the tangible business value out of that. Neal, we're coming close to the end of time here. I actually want to ask you to close out with a story. And it is a story that I don't know yet because I'm asking you this very much off the cuff. Thinking back to a company that was struggling with the buy-in on these companies, this concept of customer experience. So it could be the HVAC ones, it could be back at Honeywell, it could be any of that. What's a story that really stood out to you as far as a company that made that evolution from, I don't really care about that customer stuff, to fully embracing it, and this is where we're getting monster business value out of this?
One of my probably biggest success stories when I was at IBM is I actually was hired to lead a transformation of K Jewelers, which is sort of the consumer
Yeah.
mall website,
Yeah.
Retailer rather, and they needed to overhaul their website. And they had number of redesigns, number of agencies had already built all these sites to them, but they were not getting any conversion rate, and they couldn't understand why. And so one of the goals was to understand why, but what they were struggling with was they have this incredible in-store experience. When someone comes in their store, they have this whole approach for how they help men buy an engagement ring and things like that. But the website was devoid of any of that.
Okay.
And so we really kind of looked at, well, how could we bring some of that in-store experience into a digital experience, even if it's smaller? And one of the things that we discovered is that they offer financing, because a lot of times when in the engagement ring purchasing process, usually for men that have never done this, and they're oh my God, they see how much
it costs how much? Yeah,
right, exactly. And one of the things that we made an observation of is because they actually provide financing, and we learned this by observing in the store, doing contextual observation of seeing how they engage with customers, that they eased that whole experience by really telling them, oh, well, hey, this ring is this much per month, versus the large amount that you'll pay over 3 or 4 years or 5 years. And we said, well, why wouldn't you do that online? And so we created a prototype of showing prices by month. And we tested it with customers. They were like, oh my God, this is completely changed how they were looking, both for women as well, looking at jewelry for their own personal use. Mm-hmm. And this was a huge game changer for them. We did the design work one summer, and then their Christmas holiday shopping, they increased sales by over 40% year over year, just because of some of the changes, not only to the showing pricing by finance, but also the redesign and streamlining of how they found products. So that's just I guess it's a great story of just showing how a lot of the answers are going to come from your customers, and you just have to unlock them.
I mean, this almost encapsulates everything that I want to preach when it comes to customer experience, and that is listen to your customers, act on what they tell you, receive the tangible business value that comes from that. And right in there, you got all three. Neal, this has been a fun conversation. If folks wanted to get to know a little bit more about you, your approach to customer experience, Evolve Consulting, what would be the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, I think the best, just contact me on LinkedIn. You can find me. We do have a Evolve Partners website, but all that could be found on my LinkedIn profile. But love to talk to you. And if anybody's interested in storytelling, I do have sort of a one-day immersion offering that I'm launching out this year. So
cool. Well, I will get your LinkedIn profile there. You know the drill, listeners, viewers. Scroll down, click it. You've got direct access to Neal. Neal, it has been a delight having this conversation with you, understanding the storytelling aspect of it, understanding the foundational portions of customer experience and the evolution, the agility that needs to exist. Neal, thank you for being on CX Passport.
Well, thank you for having me, Rick. It's really a pleasure, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. If you like today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. Click subscribe on the CX Passport YouTube channel or your favorite podcast app. Next, leave a comment below the video or a review in your favorite podcast app so others can find and enjoy CX Passport too. Then head over to cxpassport.com for show notes and resources that can help you create tangible business results by delivering great customer experience. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.